Hello! It's Levels Plus Whenever time after 2+ months. Whew, episode 72. And it's going to be doing kind of a post wrap up on the entire Fire Emblem Engage saga, as well as all the pickups I've gotten since I was last recording. The reason why I named the show Levels Plus Whenever instead of Levels Plus Weekly is that I was really feeling the weight of producing content was overtaking a lot of my other things that I like to do. I like to draw, I like to write, I like to take photos, I like to work on my blogs, I like to do computery stuff, and sometimes those things just really felt like they were being pushed aside so I could produce a video quickly. And I feel like with going to this whatever format, I'm more authentic. I'm not feeling like I'm trying to force something out there. And I feel like I'm a little bit more enriched in terms of my overall creative vibe. So this has been working for me. I will try to be a little bit more often than every 3 months. But I apparently needed a break, so break taken. Let's go ahead and do the pickups first, because I think that's going to be a little bit more straightforward and exciting, because my Engage discussion is going to be it's going to be all kinds of things. Alright, let's get into the pickups. And since it's been about 2 months, I've gotten some things. I've even gotten things today. I may have missed something. I looked over everything when I got home. But I can't remember if I'm missing something. So we're just going to go through what I remembered. First up is this. It is the N64 Switch online controller. I want to play GoldenEye and Sin and Punishment and have it feel right. So I went ahead and finally grabbed one of these since it was available. While on the topic of the Switch, I also got Jar Jar Maru Legendary Ninja Collection from Strictly Limited Games. This is just the game. I didn't go all in on all the extra goodies. The main reason I got this is because it translated the RPGs, which I think will be very helpful to just have something official to do that, because that'll be like City Connection, the current owners of Jaloco's properties, said this was okay. I played through the 5th Famicom game, which is a Super Mario 3-esque platformer, which stumbles on 2 things really hard, but I'll talk about that probably at another stage. I got some toys, so I got Wendy Okupa. I happened to just see her at Target, and I was like, you know what? That'll be helpful for later. I also got more of the Fire Emblem pop-up parades for 3 houses. So here's Lysynthia. And here's Claude. I wouldn't mind getting more of these. They're really nice. But I don't want to get Dimitri or Felix, so I hope that they have more soon. I came across this very fascinating document at a antique ball. So this is an official Nintendo guide printed in 1987, before Nintendo Power was really a thing, but the people involved with it are the Nintendo Power people. Howard Phillips is on there. This is before Gail Tilden joined up. But they were like starting, and you can see like the format is there. It's coming together. So I just bought this because I've never seen it before, and it's complete. It even came with the original stickers in the back, which is kind of rad. And it's just like really random to come across it at an antique mall. I usually don't find stuff like that. And I got some Femtendo stuff. I got everything that I need to finish 1987 that I'm aware of from Japan. There's one more game from America I need to get, which is Wizards and Warriors. So I need to snag that at some point. But let's go through the items. So the key game that I got for 87 is this one. It's Minovator Saga. No, Minovaten Saga. Published by Taito. I got it complete because I couldn't find art of the characters, and there's two women that join your party that are very important, and there are little tiny bits of art in the manual, so I waited for a complete copy so I can skip that artwork. In terms of future stuff, I got Mappy Kids. The goal in this game is much like with Mappy Land. You're trying to impress a lady, but you are Mappy's son, and it's got a two-player mode where both his sons try to compete for the affection of the same woman. That's a really weirdly common trait I've discovered. While on the topic of Namco, I also got two of their family Mahjong games, and the reason why I got that is the woman on the cover is part of a tradition that Namco briefly had with its family series of having a woman on multiple copies of different games. So like Family Tennis, Family Golf, whatever they called that, Family Circuit, Family Mahjong 2 in this case. And there's a couple other ones. Side Pocket actually has her on it as well. Family Pinball, I want to say, does. So I want to get them all and do a feature on her in a later book. But this is the first two I was able to get. And I'm kicking myself because there were other ones earlier and they just have not put them for sale at the place where I get these from. Next is Double Dragon, the original one. So Double Dragon is interesting because it's a port, but it's heavily modified. And so since it's heavily modified, it changed up a lot of what's going on with it, gameplay-wise, so I'm counting it as a unique thing. And there's 3 Double Dragon games on the Famicom, and the third one gets really bizarre because the North American localization does something very different than the Japanese one. So we'll be talking about Marion and Linda for this game, and then Marion and Cleopatra and the shaman character whose name is escaping me. I'll put it down here. The last cartridge I got is Hanjuku Hero from Square. This became a little bit of a popular series. You summon things in this game, and there's a few women and mythological creatures that are female that you can summon, and they have really big sprites. So I'm going to include them as major characters. Last but not least, I got one Famicom Disk System game, and it's Fairy Tale, which is a strategy game that you can pick boys or girls. So I'm going to cover that in the full article discussing the girls' side. It's getting really interesting at this stage of trying to get the games that I still need. Because I've gotten a lot of them at this stage. There's not too many left that are common, in other words, that cost very little. Like this order, the most expensive thing that I bought was probably Fairy Tale. I think this was 12, and then Double Dragon, for whatever reason, is a little bit higher. Let's go ahead and transition into the main topic for today. Fire Emblem Engage. What it is, and I discussed this in my opinion piece that I wrote in March, after trying to do a video and just not being able to come up with a script in my mind, so I wrote it all out. Engage is mechanically one of the best in the series. It has a pretty good cast of characters, with very distinct character designs, a very strong soundtrack, and an absolute trash fire of narrative story threads, and in some cases horrid characterization. This is including the DLC. When I did the original opinion piece, which will be linked in the description, by the way, I hadn't played the Felzina log. I had gotten most of the emblem paralogs done. So this is going to be an all-encompassing discussion on the highs and lows of Fire Emblem Engage, and I'm not going to refrain from spoilers here. So if you haven't beaten the game, or you haven't touched the Felzina log and you want to go into that blind, I don't recommend continuing with this video. I recommend reading my review, which is mostly spoiler-free. I'm going to say this character did this here, and I'm going to talk about the characters that I think were done well and the characters who were done poorly. I'm going to talk about why the narrative fails. I'm going to talk about why the DLC is actually worse than the main game, amazingly enough. I'm going to try to do it succinctly, so there will probably be a lot of cuts to try to make sure that I'm not getting stuck in thoughts, so I will try to cut that out. I will also try to cut out anything that doesn't seem essential to what I'm trying to say. So let's begin. Let's start with what Engage does well. I think that mechanically, in terms of the actual battle gameplay, it is up there with the best in the series, if not the best in the series. I think that the break system, the engage system, all of that works really well, and the moment-to-moment combat is a lot of fun. It helps that the UI for combat is spectacular. It helps that the soundtrack, for the most part, is really swinging. I don't think it's as good as Echoes or as Three Houses, but I do think it's probably third in my overall soundtrack selection of the series. It's really well done. I think that there are a good 10 characters that I really, really like. Marin is my absolute favorite character from Engage. I love her personality, I love her voice, I love her design, I love that she's on a wolf. She's fantastic and easily my favorite character. She has some really good supports as well, and just everything comes together for her in a way that it doesn't for just about everybody else. In terms of other characters I like Yunaka. Yunaka is my second favorite character. I think she has an absolutely splendid backstory that supports do a great job of bringing out. Unfortunately, there's a couple supports that undermine her, especially Goldmary, who we will talk about in greater detail in a little bit. But on the whole, I really like Yunaka. Tamara, I love her theater kid energy. I love the fact that she can't actually sing, but she doesn't care. She's gonna sing anyway. I think that's marvelous for her, that she is so confident in who she is and what she wants to be, that even if she's not particularly good at it, she does it anyway. I love that. It's inspiring. It's also great that she is such a strong, capable woman of color who is going to be queen of her kingdom. I think that's great. I love that about her. Jade. Jade is a wonderful break of tradition, stoic but goofy knight in full armor, loves to write funny novels, quotes all kinds of literary things as she's fighting, and the fact that they really challenged that stereotype and had her be a knight and her break through and be so booky is the best way I could describe it, is wonderful. I think she's fantastic. I really like her a lot. Ivy. Ivy is like a character that almost should be in a different game. I really think that despite her being a bit like Camilla-esque in terms of her visual design, but her personality, the way that she approaches things, her devotion going against the grain of her country to the Divine Dragon versus the Fell Dragon, she's just a really deep, compelling character that I think this game really does a disservice to by having her in it. I think that she deserved to be in a better game in terms of narrative, because she just doesn't have a chance to really shine in the story, despite the fact that she's the lead of her country. It's really Alfred, it's really Diamant, and it's Tamara that take up a lot of that in the cutscenes, and she's just kind of there. And it's kind of disappointing in that regard. Speaking of Diamant, he's actually my favorite male character in the game. I think that he is very well written. He has a really good arc in contrast to some of the other characters who don't really feel like they have much of an arc at all. He goes from having a father to losing a father in the process of the game, and is coping with that loss, as well as trying to transition his country that has been in war with Ivy's country for decades into a peaceful, more trade-focused economy instead of the war machine. And I think that his character does a really good job of conveying that. It's quite impressive, honestly, how well he's done in the game compared to a lot of the other characters. Anna is the best Anna of all time in this game. She is spunky, she is sly, she is a cutthroat merchant, and she's wonderful. Her voice actress does wonders with her, and she has some of the best supports in the game. And she's just a delight, an absolute delight when she's on screen, and I wish she was a little bit more important than she actually ended up being, but I think she's marvelous. I love her. Zelkov is a fascinating character. I think that in terms of mystique and in terms of sorting out who he is in the world, he's fantastic. He's got such a wry personality. He's very snarky, but subtle, and he has an interesting way of pronouncing things. So he'll emphasize words like I just did. He's also like super artsy, does a lot of painting and like embroidery and stuff like that. He's into antiques. Just like, he's a thief, and yet he's got so much depth to him. He's just marvelous. I really enjoy him a lot. Panette grew a lot for me. She initially didn't really catch my attention, but in hindsight, after watching my favorite streamer Keita Nash play through the game and really like get into using her because she was such a strong unit for her, I was like, wow, okay, I think I want to use Panette in the DLC as much as possible so I can get a better sense of her. And I like her a lot now that I've got a chance to play as her. She's a character who's a brawler, comes from a rough background where she was fighting all the time, and then when she became Tamara's retainer, she feels that she needs to act a certain way. So she's got like this dignified voice, but it breaks on some of her supports and in some of her battle quotes, and you see the real her come out, and it's wonderful. I think she is a really good character. I think that her face paint is a little strong, or tattoos, or whatever's going on. That was initially what kind of threw me. It's like, wow, she's like a little much in terms of the visual aesthetic. But I think once you get into her background and you understand her a little bit more, it makes more sense, and I think it works really well for her. I think that's a 9. So I will throw one character from the DLC in there, and that's Nell. Nell, I really think, is a great design. I think that she has a really good voice. I think that she is the most interesting character out of them all. The unfortunate thing is that she's tied to the worst part of the DLC that brings the entire experience down, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But she is a fell dragon, so she has a unique play style where she could become a dragon and do attacks like that. And nobody else really has that without Tiki involved. So I think that's really cool that she has a very distinct play style until you get them in the main game and somebody else cribs her style. Anyway, that's a lot of the positive of Fire Emblem Engage. I think the art style is really strong. I think that Mika Pizzicazo brought something really unique to Fire Emblem. It's very colorful. It's very well animated. Intelligent Systems did a fantastic job rendering that into the game itself. I think that, like I said earlier, the music is really solid as well. Third best in the series overall, I would say. There's a lot to like about Engage, but there's also a lot to dislike about Engage. And ultimately, what the biggest problem Engage has is its story, its narrative, and its villains. And some of the characterizations. So, let me just go ahead and list off the 5 characters that I think are the worst characters you could recruit. At the top of the list is Goldmary, a narcissist. I don't like that. I think she's an absolute mess of a character who did incredible jobs of making me dislike her instantly, and then in her supports make me question why I like a couple of my favorite characters, as I was saying with Yunaka. What a absolute waste of a slot. I despise Goldmary so much. Whenever she's on screen, I'm like, that narcissistic energy, I don't accept that. I don't want that in my life. I've already had enough of it in my life. I don't need any more of it. So when a character comes off that strongly narcissistic, I back away. Do not want. Very, very closely tied with Goldmary is Nell's brother, whose name I don't even remember right now. Rafal. I had to look it up. That's how much I want to forget that this character exists. Rafal emphasizes the biggest issue with Fire Emblem Engage's method of storytelling. So I want to take a brief seg to talk about what this issue is, because it's so intrinsically linked to Rafal that I can't really talk about him without talking about it. So, what is the biggest fault in Fire Emblem Engage's storytelling? Its reliance on twist for no reason, to twist again for no reason, to then do another twist that it forgets so it could twist again so we can get somewhere back to the first twist. It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening how this game's plot revolves around something. Oh, we gotta do a twist on that, and then we gotta do a twist on that again, forgetting the second twist, but going to the third twist, which goes back to the first twist. Ugh, it's so poorly executed in this game. You can't write a story with twists being the only thing that drives it. You need to have reasons for those twists to have weight. And I feel that Rafal, even more than Sombron and the Four Hounds, bring this point to such the forefront of why I have issues with this game. Rafal starts the game as Nil and plays up that he is a weaker, not as good sibling to Nell. But the game has these little backstory, flashback things that show that Nil is not what he's portraying himself as, and Nil is also not quite who she's portraying herself as. So we start getting this really interesting plot development, right? Well, then in the 4th chapter, they decide, you know what, let's make Nil the bad guy. Nil will be the bad guy. So we're going to have Nil take a leer, and then you're going to have to do an absolutely awful chapter, chapter 5, to get your Leer back. You can't play as a Leer, so you have to use all your other units. But we are going to put Nell with Nil in a very tiny room where Nil has to basically kill Nell to win. And he can bring in extra units. She cannot. There's a barrier and she's surrounded by walls. So unless you really, really, really use the engage system well, you're going to lose that map. And there's a couple different strategies to do this. I used Celica to get out of that situation with her warp ability. When I watched Keita Nash play, she used Corrin and the ability to do the various dragon veins to make it almost impossible to hit Nil. Then we get out of that chapter, out of that mess, and Nil takes Nell. And then the last chapter is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically, let's do a twist, 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 like I was saying. It's like they're throwing in all of these things that don't need to be there. Just make him a villain. Make him a bad guy. That's what we want when we are fighting something, you know? This game doesn't know how to do villain. It's trying to redeem everyone. And you can't do that. It's okay for a game like this to have a truly bad individual that is completely corrupt and cannot be redeemed. But this game wants to redeem them all. Zumbron, let's redeem him. Four Hounds, let's redeem them. Nil, let's redeem him. Make him Rafal, make him a playable character in your party, and make him still be an insufferable asshole in his supports. So that way you just don't really know why he's even there. I don't understand Rafal's purpose. Because he's like flip-flops between 5 different positions in the opening of chapter 6. He's like, I'm bad, I'm gonna kill you. Wait, I don't want this. Why am I doing this? I want power because Dad says so. I'm going to kill. It's like, it's so poorly done. It's so poorly done. It killed the DLC. I have no interest in if I ever replay Engage, which I'm not going to do for a long time. I am not playing the Fel Xenologue again. I have accepted this, that I will not get Nil. I will not get the 3 wins that still live, even though I think they're pretty good characters as well, because of Rafal. He killed it. He absolutely murdered it. There was some interesting things they were attempting to do, and they just ruined it. Let's get back to those other 3 bad characters. Vander. Vander is your lead steward, but I think he's just a jerk. He's a jerk to Fran and Clan in their supports. He's stuffy. He's weird. And all of the stewards are weird when it comes to Alir. But Vander's like, it's just all these things come together, and he's not a great unit. He's just a terrible unit. He's got the Fire Emblem advanced class at the beginning of the game curse, which is the unit is typically terrible in contrast to everyone else by the time you get them into their upgraded class. So he just feels pointless. Benet's weird. Benet is a HR lawsuit waiting to happen. Benet is a chef, but his interest in flavor is so like over the top bizarre that he licks things that he shouldn't be licking, like people's clothes while they're actively wearing them. That's weird. That's not acceptable. That made me really despise his existence. And he almost always goes there. There's a couple he doesn't, and thank goodness he doesn't on a couple of those because they're with children. But it's just bleh. It's really bleh. It's a bad decision. Last but not least, I'm sorry. Fram got on my nerves so hard that right at the beginning, because she is obsessed with Alir to the point of fanaticism. It's creepy. She has a fan club. Whenever the divine dragon looks at her, she flips out and screams. And that continues until like chapter 24. So like you're fighting Sombra and you bring out Fram. The divine dragon looked at me! They have been looking at you the entire time because they have been in the game for 24 chapters, plus paralogs, plus possibly the DLC if you went that way. So why is that still a big deal? You should be okay with this. She's just a fangirl taken to such a horrid extreme. And I feel really bad because I love the way that her design is. I think she's got a fantastic design. I don't think the voice actress is doing a bad job. I think that when Alir's not involved, Fram is fine. In fact, there's a couple she's good. But just the moment Alir enters that conversation, enters the sphere of knowledge, of being in some plane near Fram, she just loses it. And it's just like, oh, stop it. So those are the 5 worst characters. I have opinions. Sombron is a terrible villain. Sombron is uninteresting. And the game, again, tries to redeem him at the end because he lost his emblem. He got banished from his original world and he lost his emblem, and his emblem disappeared. Instead of being able to find new friends, he decides that he doesn't want any other friends and goes on a murder rampage and becomes the bad in this world. And does all of these unspeakable horrors with the corrupted, killing so many Illusians, and basically the war that almost tore Elios apart. He did all of this because he just wants to find his friend. And Alir and Vale, who are his children, want to give him compassion, and they shouldn't because of what he's done. You can't find the one good thing and overwrite the atrocities, the hundreds, thousands of atrocities that a character that is supposed to be the main villain has done. You can't do that. It doesn't work when you have set the stakes this high. But they had to throw twists in there. Alir dies 4 times. And we twisted 4 times to have her be there. We could have just skipped 2 of those twists. We could have just had her die once and then the emblems give her the power to be the 13th emblem. But no, we have to have a mission where someone takes all of the emblems to get his wish, which doesn't really get him anywhere. It just gets him to a portal up in the sky that takes the rest of the game for him to even attempt to open, which he doesn't open because the game's story can't let him escape unless you lose that final battle. So you have to do a map where Alir is a corrupted, that Vale brings her back as a corrupted, and then she dies again, and then the emblems decide to bring her back. And then she questionably dies in the DLC. So it's just like, why? Why is this game written like this? It really shows how much Three Houses got right, even with its faults and its narrative. That it had a different set of writers. It had Koei Tecmo's writers. And Intelligent Systems is stuck with the same writers that wrote Awakening, Fates, and to some extent Echoes, which is a remake. And it shows in Engage that they are in desperate need of either yanking those Koei Tecmo writers or getting some new blood on the staff. The worst written Fire Emblem, I would argue, it's in some ways worse than Fates, and I don't like Fates. But I don't like Fates for a lot more reasons than just the story. I think that the characters are a lot less interesting in Fates. I think that the gameplay was less interesting in Fates. And I just feel like Fates, the way that it decided to be 3 separate full-priced games, was a bad idea. So, Engage is better than Fates. on the merit of it is a full package with an extra story that I almost would recommend not partaking in. Get the bracelets. The bracelets are fine. Add those in. But don't worry about the Femtendo, because it will probably hurt you mentally and emotionally trying to understand how this story was written. At least Engage's story on the whole, despite its reliance on doing twists that they don't need to be doing to flesh it out, at least it has somewhat of a decent conclusion. It's still not great, it's not like brilliant by any means, but at least it feels better. I think Vill's Log actually amplifies the issues in Engage's storytelling and makes it worse than it was when you didn't play it. It's just fun, you know? It's just like Three Houses is my favorite Fire Emblem by a long shot, and I never expected Engage to match it. But I just didn't expect the drop off on the narrative front to be basically like a cliff dive. I would have hoped that there was lessons learned from Fates, but no. I can say after beating Engage, there was not. In terms of Intelligent Systems' approach to writing Fire Emblem themselves. And that's just, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious, I think, depending on the next game. If it's a remake, I'll probably be down for it, but if it's a brand new game that's not connected to an outside company, the way Three Houses ended up being split between Koei Tecmo and with Intelligent Systems, I might not jump on it as fast. I might actually wait. Because as good as this game is on a gameplay front, it has a lot of just quality of life issues too. And it feels like the base is just there to have a base with like fluff added to it that doesn't need to be there. And that's one of the things that I think Engage's biggest problem is. It just adds things that don't need to be there. And that's, it kind of goes with the whole twists thing that I was saying earlier. They just add stuff that, why? Why did you waste the time? Why do we need to do workouts? Why did you change the fishing mechanics to make them worse? Why do we have a Panzer Dragoon knockoff? They're not fun. They're not engaging. The way that the base works, you don't get the interaction that you did in Three Houses or in Three Hopes even. You're just there, wandering around. The gacha system, clever, not necessary for the game, because once you get all the rings and the bracelets, you don't really need those rings unless you get S ones. But it just feels like a waste of time and energy to gather up bond fragments to do that, when you can use bond fragments for things that are more essential, like training, leveling up your bonds with your emblem rings. It's just, I don't understand. I think that's the thing. I don't understand this game and some of the decisions that they made. And it's frustrating because I love Fire Emblem. Since the original one that was localized back on the Game Boy Advance, I have loved this series. And it's one of my absolute favorites because of the strength of that Fire Emblem game, of Awakening, and then of Echoes, and then Three Houses. And then even Warriors and Three Hopes were very good. And I'm looking forward to giving Sacred Stones and Path of Radiance a second chance. Because I think those are also good. And I have Shadow Dragon now, the original, for the Famicom, localized in English. I was able to get the collector's edition of that, so I have it. So I can experience the original game and see where it all started. Fates was the worst, outside of Shadow Dragon's remake on the DS, which was way too faithful and just an ugly, unattractive, uninspiring enhancement, and I use quotes there, to try to last ditch the series into remake land, and it didn't work. We didn't even get the better new Mystery of the Emblem remake on the DS because of how bad Shadow Dragon did. Awakening was truly the reawakening of this series. Fates was a mistake. Echoes stood strongly as how we can remake these titles and keep them relevant, engaging, and fun while still maintaining a lot of the legacy of the original game. And then Three Houses shook up the format so much and made it, for me, clearly the best game in the entire franchise because of those risks. And Engage really feels like they did not take many risks on this. And that, I think, is what my biggest issue is when it all comes down to it, is that this is a safe game. It's a very safe game. While they did do some new cool stuff with the mechanics, this is a safe, comfortable, going back to basics, Awakening Fates level game. After Three Houses really redefined what this series could be. And I miss that, even though I didn't expect it to return. And that, I think, is why Engage just didn't resonate the way that I hoped it would. It's great. It's a great game. I still consider it like a B minus maybe, with the DLC considered. But in terms of someone who loves their story and their narratives and character interactions, this game fails because it only knows how to do one thing, and that is to twist itself into knots. So, Tears of the Kingdom's coming out in 2 weeks, so I will probably do a Levels Plus plays of the first moments of Tears of the Kingdom as the next video, unless there's some sort of direct thing that happens between here and now. So look forward to that. Until the next Levels Plus Whenever, I hope that you have a wonderful set of days. It won't be months, I promise. And I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.